Hello comrades. Whether you're designing a poster to be printed or you're making video shorts on the internet to influence others, you really need to understand what is color and how to pick color to influence others.
Okay.
In this video, we're going to improve this graphic to raise awareness for color blindness, but in the process learn how to truly pick colors for accessible designs and influence everyone around you.
Right.
I'm using my favorite image editing software, and we're going to start this tutorial with a color selector tool. We're going to learn how to select colors and how computers represent colors. The first way to select a color is to use an eyedropper tool. The eyedropper tool will select the color that's visible on the screen, and it will select it for you down here. It will also give you a number representation, otherwise known as a hex representation, a hexadecimal color, or an HTML notation. This is very useful for web developers who build websites, and it's easier for me to type a color than to have to use my mouse to click it. So in this case, let's start with the most basic of all colors, the color black. Yes, black is a color, so is white. Let's learn why. The hex code for black is 000000. That's 6 zeros. And what that represents is there is 0 red, 0 green, and 0 blue hue. These are the red, blue, and green channels that represent color. And this is when you have color that's represented on a screen with a light. If we, for example, go with 100% red light, we get this beautiful red hue. Very, very similarly, we can go with 100% green and get this simple but beautiful green hue. And we can also get 100% blue. So 100% green, and then we swap to 100% blue. We get this nice blue hue. We can also start to have some fun by picking other hues. If we add red to blue, well, we get magenta. If we add green, so if we remove the blue, we add green to magenta, we get yellow. And very, very similarly, if we take green and we add blue light, we get cyan.
Okay.
That's great and a great representation on a screen, but how does it work for print and art with paint? Well, there's a different representation, and that's in the second tab. So if I click this tab, we can start to see cyan channels, magenta channels, yellow, and black. And those are the same colors that you have for ink. So if you have 100% cyan ink, you have this nice cyan color. Very, very similarly, we can start to add magenta and yellow ink. If we take yellow and we add cyan, we start to get our primary colors. We get green. If we take cyan, we add magenta, we get blue. And you probably guessed it, if we have magenta, we add yellow, we get red. If we want to darken this red color, of course we can add black ink, which is cheaper. But if we wanted black as well, something else we can do is use 100% cyan, magenta, and yellow ink to get black. Similarly, if we wanted to print white on a white paper, well, we would have 0 cyan, 0 magenta, 0 yellow, 0 black, and we would have white. Great. So that's how we select hue. But there's also a different representation of color that you'll see here. It's not just the hue that matters, it's also something called the saturation and the brightness value. So this is hue, this is saturation, this is brightness. The best way to understand this is actually going to a color wheel and a saturation and brightness triangle. Let's learn how that works. So on this triangle, if we go back to that basic red hue that we selected, we can start to select other hues. Those hues are represented as angles around this color wheel. You'll notice when I start to change those values, it goes from 0 degrees all the way around to 360 degrees. So if I want to get the very basic yellow hue, I can start at 0 degrees. If I wanted to then go to the next primary color, green, I can go 1/3 away around the circle, or 120 degrees. And if I wanted to go to blue, you can guess it, 240 will take us to blue. It becomes very, very easy for us to then move to other parts of the circle. So if I wanted to find the complement of blue, well, it would be 90 degrees. Sorry, not 90 degrees. It would be 60 degrees, which would be yellow on the other side. So I can find the opposite side of the circle using angles and math. The other aspect that you would want to know about color is also the saturation and the brightness. The saturation, you'll notice, is on the clockwise or right-hand side of this triangle when you select a hue. If I change that saturation value, look how the selector starts to move on this triangle. So this is a very, very intense yellow. As I start to change the saturation, the intensity starts to decrease.
Okay.
I can also do this selection from the triangle itself. So if I wanted to look at a different hue, let's say red, I can start to see the saturation decreasing as it goes to pure white. Very, very similarly, there's another channel called value or brightness. And I can start to change the brightness value going from 100% brightness, white, all the way to black. And again, I can use the triangle to make a selection, and I can even go somewhere in between to pick the perfect color. Well, what is the perfect color and how do we select colors when doing design? Well, let's look at something pretty practical. So if I go back to this design, what we see here is we see some text that's in front of a background.
Okay.
I think we can do a lot better than this because it's difficult to actually see that text. So something that we can do is create contrast or add a background for that text. So if I add this text background, we can see I added a bubble layer. But this bubble layer, it's pretty invasive. It's pretty obtrusive. It's in front of the background image. I don't really like it because I start to lose some of that information that I had back there. Well, the third part about color that we're going to learn is this concept of opacity. And so I can start to change the opacity. So right now it's at 100%. I can start to change the opacity of a specific layer. In this example, I'm going to change the opacity of the text layer, which starts to show you some of the colors that are below. The opposite of opacity is transparency. So if I increase the transparency, I can see what's below. Or if I increase the opacity, then I can't see what's behind it. I'm going to pick something between 80 and 90%. But I'm also wanted to pick a color so that this speech bubble will pop out against this background. So if I go back to my color selector tool, I can use the eyedropper to select one of those colors that I saw. I'm going to pick one of the primary ones that that image has, which is this nice pink color that you see over here. So if I wanted to find a color that has good contrast, the first thing I'm going to do is pick something on the opposite side of the color wheel. I'm not that great at math, so I'm just going to make a selection on the other side. And I'm also going to look where on the triangle or what saturation and brightness value my color has. And then I'm going to go to a section of the triangle that I like that's further away or different than where it originally was. So I'm going to pick somewhere in this region. And so I've selected this kind of turquoise darker color. I'm going to click OK. And now I can use this color to fill in my bubbles. So I'm going to fill in this bubble. I'm going to fill in this bubble. I'm going to fill in this bubble. Again, I can play with the opacity or change the opacity to make it look good. And then I can maybe add some other things to make it look slightly better. One idea is I can maybe add a stroke. So to give it some riz, I can, add a stroke around so I can actually like see that text bubble. So I'm going to create a new layer. And then I'm going to add a nice stroke, a black oh, let me change the color to black. I'm going to pick a nice black stroke around that text bubble. So click the button stroke. I now have an outline. It's a little bit easier to see. Maybe I'm done. So I can go to File. I can export. And I have this image. But if I really want to get that WRIZ, what I need to make sure is that this image or this graphic looks really good to all types of people. And so people see color differently. And the great thing about technology is that there's software that can simulate how color looks for others.
Okay.
One of those websites is color-blindness.com, and they have a color blindness simulator. And so they have this default image with different pastels or crayons, and then you can start to click different types of challenges that some people might have perceiving color. And so as you can see, the crayons here look completely different to different types of people. And so we want to make sure that when we do our design, things look good for everybody because we want to have the largest audience and build the best product that we can. And so I'm going to upload that file. So let's pick that file that we just created, and we can see it here. This is how it looks for me in its default view. And then we can start to see certain challenges that some people might have. So if they're red weak, green weak, blue weak, if you do green weak, you can start to see it's actually very difficult for them to see this image. But if we design the speech bubble well, we can start to see the contrast there and it still would be visible. It's a little bit hard to read the text. I might want to up the opacity so there's a little bit more contrast. And the main one you should always look for also is how it looks like without any color. Is there contrast in black and white? And so it looks pretty good to me. I can see most things. If I go back to the software, I think I'm just going to up the opacity a little bit from 85 to 90, re-export and see how it looks. So let's replace it, export it, go back to the website. Great, and then take a look and see. Well, here, a lot more contrast. That 5% did make a difference.
Nice.
I guess we're done. Thanks for watching.
He done it!